Hello, and welcome to Khyber Shards, a 5th edition actual play show set in the Eberron campaign world. I'm Philip.
And I'm Eric.
And it's Friday, so we're doing another Khyber Shards Answers. Well, it's not Friday right now, but it will be Friday when you're watching this. And we're doing another Khyber Shards Answers. This time we've got Eric. So last time that we did one of these, or well, that I did one of these, we did a recap of Chapter 1, which, based on the last time I checked, which was admittedly a few days ago, so far the title suggestion that I'm leaning towards is Splinters, which is pretty solid.
Yeah.
And today we're going to talk a little bit about Ari for Eric's views, not Ari's views. I'm not going to do this in character. For Eric's views.
Well, you see,
Chapter 1 and how Ari's changed. We got some good questions to guide that discussion, I think. So I think it's probably best to just jump into that. We got a series of questions from one of our listeners, or viewers, I guess, Richard, who had a series of questions for each of the players that I'm going to go through as we go through our next rotation. So, Eric, what has been, so far, your most enjoyable moment? And it does say this is for each of the players as opposed to Ari.
Yeah. I mean, probably, and it's tough because we just recorded a batch of episodes for Chapter 2.
That is true.
That
literally just
probably supersedes a lot of the answers I'm about to give, if I'm being perfectly honest, for the session we just recorded. But no, I really enjoyed, from a most enjoyable moment standpoint, the House of Vaedalis, Kolos, that whole thing, while Ezri and Ari were sitting in the ship's cat waiting on our friends to come join us for breakfast. Because we as a party do tend to split up and go do our own things. But that was the first time that it became apparent, like, oh, if a player has an idea, they're just gonna run with it. And like, this situation was presented to Casey and Shade, and was like, nope, need to deal with this now. There's no time to wait. We're going to go for it. And for me as a player, I'm really excited to play with a group of players that don't feel the need to overplan every single thing and are just willing to go with something when something presents itself. And so that was a very enjoyable scene for me, even though I was involved in it very little. It was very enjoyable to watch it and then eventually become a part of it. So, yeah.
And I adore the tendency of this group to split up, and not just like from an evil GM opportunities to kill you. I've said this many times, I love splitting the party. I think it's so great and it's so fun, and you get characters being forced to try and do things without the specialist. Mm-hmm. Every group's got specialists in things. If this group has to talk their way into somewhere without Ari, then they're at a severe handicap. If they have to go in and interrogate someone and figure out whether they're lying without Esri, then they're at a severe handicap. If Esri and Ari have to go into a physical competition without the help of Shade and Pog, they're in trouble. So, I like the creativity that tends to engender. So, yes, that was very funny. Relatedly, Richard asks, most surprising moment.
This one is kind of an interesting one because surprising can mean a lot of things. But I think Falco showing up when Ari was at the bar was a big kind of moment, because obviously I had expected, because I've played D&D before, I expected our history to catch up to us at some point. It was just a lot sooner than what I was expecting. It's like, oh God, you're already here? No, like I'm supposed to be level 10 before you get here. And so that moment was just like our past is going to be a lot more present in our lives than what I thought it was going to be sooner anyway. So
It is, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Funniest moment. It's
so hard to. it's tough recording this right after recording a couple of episodes, because those are like the recency bias of just in my brain, and because it was such an elevated episode in terms of hijinks. But probably this is for the next episode. Nope, I can't say it. There's a moment during the Pog Solarka date that was hilarious to me. But in terms of chapter 1, the first chapter, I don't know. There were a lot of really, really funny and fun moments to be a part of. I think my favorite bit was denying Esri bacon. I think that became my favorite like bit in the house, is like making bacon for Pog, making bacon for Cal, and Esri clearly wanting some, but just be like, nope, you can have the oatmeal. So I know that's not the most like belly busting like haha moment, but that became kind of my favorite bit, running gag on the show.
Nice. What do you think? In what way? I don't know how to ask this. It just says characters, accomplishment, growth up to this point. I'm trying to form it into a question. What do you see as Ari's accomplishments or growth in chapter 1?
I mean, I think a big one was like in the moment push come to shove, Avia, Devatalus, that moment of there's this heir to a dragon marked house, not the house that that impacted Ari's life in such a big way, but he has a gripe with all of them as a collective. And that moment of, if I do nothing, she's just going to die. And I
was not sure what you would do. I was not sure what Ari would do there. This is tantamount to killing her myself, and I don't know if I'm ready to be that far down the deep end, kind of thing. And so, that moment for me was, and the reason it was like a accomplishment growth moment is because in the moment I felt like it was totally justified from Ari's standpoint, and I didn't have to think about it. Like it wasn't something where I was like, ooh, like I had the moment, I decided, no, we're not going to let this person die, and then was like, oh, I don't want this dragon marked person to die. Weird. Because I think up to this point, it's always been theoretical. Like, I like, and so yeah, I think that was a growth moment for Ari of like, okay, so still want to tear down the system, but don't want to murder people. Got it. So yeah. You found a line.
Yeah. For now.
Cool. This is probably connected to what you just said, but is Ari taking a developmental direction? Is Ari taking the developmental direction that you envisioned when you first created the character?
I still think yes. I think the introduction of Tamil as a more radicalized version has tempered what I initially expected. Ari wasn't going to be full Tamil, but Ari was certainly going to be further along that path. And I think having this foil within the story to kind of be this dark reflection of Ari's beliefs and mindset towards the dragon marked houses has caused me to pull back a little bit and become more of a institutional change kind of thing instead of attacking people, which I never envisioned Ari as being somebody that would attack people in the streets. But yeah.
But the houses are the bad guys, not necessarily every heir.
Yeah, he still doesn't have a good opinion of people that choose to be a part of the house. But yeah, he's not to the point where it's like, kill him. Kylo, stop itching your face on the desk.
Just wait till you figure out what Avia was doing down there.
Yeah, right?
It's going to be good. We got that adventure planned. It's going to be good. Cool. There was another interesting question, and I mean, I think you've done a lot of writing as Ari, so you probably do have an answer to this. This one may be one that we have some people who don't, or maybe don't want to reveal, possibly. A question from, I'm not 100% sure which of our patrons this is, but the screen name is Al Dente, so I'm going to go with that. Al Dente asks, what is each PC's most positive childhood memory?
Yeah, and we did skip over one of Richard's questions about most afraid for their characters' lives.
Yes, I did. Thank you. Yes. When have you been most afraid for Ari's
life? The Kruthic. I mean, but
sure.
No, honestly, because that moment was like, oh God, I might die, but there's children in danger. The moment that like was the most heart-stopping, I feel like, for Ari was the conversation with the Knight of Thrain.
Taurus.
The charm person moment, like Ari thought, I'm going to be in a cell forever. Like this has gone so bad. Like, cause, like that was a moment for Ari where it was like, oh no, like we finally done did it. Or I finally done did it. Cause Ari's been in shenanigans for a while now. And so, that was the moment that Ari was just like, oh no. So, most positive childhood memory though, he, like I said, he's had a really good childhood up until a certain point where it all went really bad.
Right.
But I think the most positive childhood memory is he actually written on his character sheet. He still carries with him a lock of hair that belonged to his grandmother, and I kind of come up with this ritual in my head when I think it's a trinket that I get for my background. I don't, or I might have manually written it in there. I can't remember. It was in one of the prompts in the book that I do a lot of my writing in for Ari. That it's a ritualistic thing for at least the sect of Korovar that he was a part of, that it was customary for when a loved one or a family member dies to take a piece to remember them by, so that you always have a piece of them with you. And the thing that he loved about his grandmother when he was a baby was like playing with her hair and pulling and tugging at it. And so when she passed, he took a locket of her hair. But that was the last, this is going to sound really weird, her funeral / wake was the last positive death in his life, like that celebration of somebody's life, and not they are dead and never coming back. And so remembering his grandmother and sitting around with his family and laughing and sharing food and song, that was probably the most positive childhood memory that Ari has, probably because it was one of the last positive memories that he had. So, and he still has this thing to hold on to that he remembers it. So, yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
So,
and then we had a question from Eric. What is the food to cat hair ratio in the food at the ship's cat? It's all food. Harish is able to prevent cat hair from getting into her food for one thing. Yes, there are cats all over the place, but they're not like walking on the cooktops or sitting in the kitchenware. Like Harish is a restaurateur. She's not, she's not filthy. But additionally, Harish is a spellcaster and is able to take care of such things arcanely. So the ship's cat is specially enchanted to prevent that problem from arising in the food, because otherwise you just couldn't have a plausible business model based on allowing feral cats to wander around your restaurant.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, already she's just very lucky there's not a health inspector in Stormreach, because there's no way we're up to code here. Any other thoughts on Chapter 1? I know we're now a little bit of recording into Chapter 2, but...
Yeah, I really enjoyed Chapter 1. I enjoyed getting to know not only my character, but the other PCs a lot better, and kind of beginning to establish those dynamics and those relationships between all of them. And yeah, it was interesting because I I don't know. It's just interesting to have such a disparate group of people, not in a we met in a tavern from different backgrounds kind of way, but in a truly like we are all very, very, very different people with different priorities and different worldviews. And how do you make that work as an adventuring party? When/if we become an adventuring party. So yeah, I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed getting to play in the space as Ari and make some wacky and wild choices that both you and the other players allowed me to do. So yeah, it's been good. I've really enjoyed chapter 1.
I have enjoyed how I really liked how free all the players felt to just be their characters, even when that was what we might call suboptimal. Although again, optimal for what exactly?
Yeah. For killing.
Sure. Definitely suboptimal for killing so far in this game. Although you guys have done a fair decent job at it when you've needed to. So
yeah.
Okay, so moving into chapter 2 with the downtime a little bit, you decided to learn Giant.
Yes.
Just from a practical standpoint, I think.
Yep. Felt like it was silly over the course of 2 years. None of us thought to do that. So went ahead and took care of it.
So for those that don't know, we kind of looked at the downtime rules in Xanathar's Guide to Everything, which suggests that it costs 25 gold a week to learn a new language. Which
for 10 weeks minus your intelligence modifier. Yeah.
Yeah. So he needs 7 weeks of training. So pretty rough there. So I thought that was a perfectly reasonable thing, and I didn't want to exactly punish him, but I also didn't want to just make it free. So that's where we came up with you're going to need to find a tutor and barter, which is very in Ari's wheelhouse anyway. I imagine that a lot of what Ari owns is gotten through trade, and I imagine that Ari receives a lot of payment in kind for his services.
So many eggs. Just...
Where do you think the bacon comes from?
Yeah. Yeah, right.
Obviously, Ari brings it home. So going with Hular, the choice of Hular versus Ilya, just because it seemed a little odd to hang out with a it was adolescent girl.
It was a few different things. Yes. Ari asking to spend one-on-one time with an adolescent girl seemed weird.
And Ari's not creepy. Like Ari's a bit of a player, but he's not a creep.
Yeah. And so it was just like, no, I'm not going to ask this child to spend to do this. Also,
you do not want to anger her father.
No,
I feel like I've communicated that. You really, really don't want to anger her father.
Yeah. I'm 100% certain if I had chosen to go with the Ilya route, it would have been a conversation with Soleil and Zenaida of, hey, I need to learn Giant. And
sure.
So
anyway. No, I mean, there would be non-creepy ways to deal with it. Yeah. But yes, I understand your thinking.
Also, Ari, along with the entirety of the city of Stormreach, is aware of Pog's feelings towards Solarka. And so he viewed that as also an opportunity to, spend time around her, get a feel for whether or not she what ended up kind of playing out. And then lastly, honestly, when we were discussing in a meta standpoint options, the Hular thing was what we discussed, and the Ilya thing was in the moment. And I was like, I'm going to go with Hular. The Ilya thing
occurred to me in the moment. Yeah.
So I was like, I'm going to stick with the plan. So yeah, those are the reasons why I went with what I went with. So
we haven't quite worked out how aware Ari is of that he's the object of somewhat gentle pranking. But Laura wants to know, is working in the Forge worth the Giant lessons to Ari? I imagine that, Ari grew up in a family. Ari grew up with older people. I imagine that Ari has been the freshman before, has been hazed to a degree before.
Yeah, Ari thrives on community, and he is a full-on extrovert, and so he would much rather do this than be sitting in a library poring over a book trying to learn Giant. But yeah, the time down, I've tried to display Ari through his leveling and the abilities that he's taken as very intelligent and reactionary to the world around him. Like when we got second level, I took Tasha's Hideous Laughter because of the Donabella running around being out of control situation and Ari not having a non-damaging option in that situation. It's like, okay, Tasha's is that thing, so Ari would focus his mind on doing that. And so I've tried to portray Ari as somebody that tries to develop with the world around him. And so us not knowing Giant being this big thing, not only in the ruins, but also that amulet that got passed in the Tommel situation and not being able to recognize anything. It's like, we live in a city full of giant writing. I should know how to read and speak Giant. And so not sure if he's learning how to read it since he's learning Giant verbally. So that might be a problem. But but no, it's absolutely worth it. And also the Pog stuff is icing on the cake. So the pranking and stuff like that is frustrating because, yes, he was at one time a younger child in a group full of older sibling or older family, but he's in his 20s now. Like he's not pledging a frat or anything. Like, I'm trying to learn a language and do work for your dad. Please leave me alone. So yeah. But no, Ari isn't upset or anything, and he tries to not show that it gets to him. He tries not to give them the satisfaction. When he gets home, obviously he's like, "Oh my God, why are my arms black all the time?" But he tries to keep a good face around the brothers. So yeah, it's fun.
And I have obviously had fun with it, and we have a little, we have more fun with it.
Yeah,
that's not spoiling anything. Obviously, we're going to have more fun with it.
Tune in on Monday.
Well,
the other thing with the Ilya decision versus Hular is I tend to, and this is just my style of play, I tend to, when given choices like that, tend to try and do something that will be more central to, like, I knew going with Hular that Pog could be involved in that, as opposed to if I went with Ilya, it would be kind of isolated away from the party potentially. And so I like to make those choices that give the other players the opportunity to play in the space. So, yeah.
So I'm curious about something, being an extrovert and being someone who's very, who is very sensitive to culture, just to the feeling of being included in a culture and that sort of thing, and who's really tried to get involved in the core of our community here and that sort of thing.
We got to find a way to put that in an episode at some point.
Yeah, we do. I that's on me too. We need to have a Unity dinner or something. What are Ari's feelings about the giants and the giant-ish cultures that live around Stormreach, considering that Stormreach is, you can't avoid that you're, it isn't like a modern city that might have been built over an ancient city where the ancient city is under a mall parking lot somewhere. You're in and among it. What is Ari's feeling on that? Especially considering the work that he does with Chirons and trying to get back that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's a really interesting discussion in general, because I think that, Ari grew up in Corvair, where a lot of those structures are built on goblin ruins as well. Like Sharn is built off of the ruins of the Dakani Empire.
Durasharn, yeah.
And so it's not a foreign concept when Ari arrived in Stormreach, but it's so much more overt than but at the same time, I think that once Ari got acclimated to the fact that, like, these are thousands upon thousands of years old, like, it's not like the giants that live in the tents outside the city were kicked out. And
it's not conquest. Yeah. It's not a result of conquest or colonization or anything.
Yeah, and it's not even like how he views the Chirons of, like, your home is right there and you can't get to it kind of thing. And so I think he finds it fascinating to see how a culture can endure, and yet the people that came from that culture be so far removed from it in a almost spiritual way, because the giants that live in the tents are so far removed from the giants that constructed the city.
Yeah, definitely.
And, you know, legacy and story and all of these things being something that were instilled in Ari from a very young age as being important. And the stories that are told about Korrivar to generation after generation. It's tragic in an almost beautiful way that their stories persist in the form of these ruins, and yet they are not fully accessible to the people that they are for, I guess, is the way that Ari views it. And he has a lot of thoughts and feelings on that dynamic. But honestly, I mean, he doesn't speak giant, and he doesn't know anybody that lives in the tents of Reshame, so he hasn't like gone to talk to them about it. Maybe once he knows giant, he might, you know, go have some conversations. But yeah, it's tragic, but in a very different way than the Chiron plight to Ari. So yeah.
So a question for Eric from me, because you are of my players, the one who's, you know, read more of the Eberron books than anyone else. What is to you, and this is not just asking for a plot hook, I'm just curious, what is to you the most interesting aspect of Zendrick that we haven't gotten to yet?
Ooh.
I mean, there's a lot, I realize.
Yeah, there's a lot.
We've been pretty narrow so far.
So for me, obviously because of Eberron Renewed stuff, I spent a lot of time out in the Zendals of Jundrick is what I was going to say. The jungles of Zendrick. Yeah. And so a lot of the randomness that exists out there is really intriguing. But the one thing that I never got to touch on when I was utilizing Stormreach that I love, and I don't know if this is official like C canon or even K canon, or if it's something else that I picked up over the years. But you know, the idea that Stormreach is a city built upon a city, built upon a city, built upon a city. And what did the giants build on? Like what was there before the giants? And if you broke down into that next level of the ruins, what is there to find or unleash down there? And you know, I've seen people talk about the bug people from Dark Sun.
Thrycreen.
The Thrycreen perhaps having a city that the giants built off of, or something like that, or even going down into Coatl, like the Coatl came from this continent to the Age of Demons and stuff like that. So I know we just got done talking about the history of Stormreach, but like that deeper history of Stormreach is something that is fascinating to me, because it's such a playground for a DM to play in, because it's not super codified. We know it's giant ruins, but what ruins lie beneath? So yeah, that's something that I really enjoy and find intriguing. So
I think one of my favorite sidebars in the Stormreach book, from the very first time that I read it, way back when we were running our big 3-year campaign, and we used this a little bit, is talking about the Thrycreen as just super alien to anyone, because they don't communicate in a language that you can learn to speak. Like non-Thrycreen don't have the physiology to speak Kreen. They can learn to interpret it, but you can't learn to speak it. And so communicating with the Thrycreen is just incredibly difficult. They don't have a known writing system. Like, it's just, they're super alien. And there is one Zill archaeologist hanging around Stormreach who's just obsessed with them, and his name is Lone Ender. So there's just a little Ender's Game Easter egg stuck there in the middle of the city. So yeah, that's what that made me think of, is Lone Ender hanging around studying the Thrycreen, trying to understand them.
Excellent.
Yeah. So, Well, all right. I believe we got through all of our questions. Double checking. Yes, we did. So thank you so much. Thank you, Eric, for that insight into you and Ari's views on the campaign so far. Hopefully you've enjoyed what you've gotten of chapter 2 so far with our little downtime episode.
Buckle up.
Super excited for Monday's episode and seeing people's reactions to really all of the things. I mean, I know everybody knows the Pog and Solarca date is coming up, and it's delightful. I hope it's meets expectations, because I know they're bloody high, but but it's delightful. Like I had so much fun running that and far more fun.
You did.
Yeah. Well, I mean, unsurprisingly, Colin's a good date.
Yeah.
Just, and he's single.
Internet.
So that's a lot of fun. So we hope you will look forward to that and let us know what you think. If you are a fan of Eberron, let us know what you think is the most interesting thing about Zendrick. If you're only a fan of our show, first off, thank you. And let us know what you think is the most interesting thing about Zendrick and Stormreach that we've explored so far.
Yeah.
And we'd love to hear it in the comments below. If you're enjoying this, please feel free to like and subscribe and give us a comment to feed our almighty patron algorithm. All praise algorithm. And we hope you will join us on Monday for another episode. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can find links to all of our social medias where we are the Geek Pantheon in the description down below, along with a link to our Discord and to our Patreon. You can also find Eric streaming twitch.tv/The Geek Pantheon on Sunday mornings and Monday and Tuesday evenings, where he plays a mix of story games and just D&D chat.
Yeah.
He usually goes live right after on Monday nights and usually spends the first bit of time talking about the most recent Khyber Shards episode. And I am often in the chat, but not always. So if you want to chat with us a bit about Khyber Shards, or at least chat with Eric a little bit about Khyber Shards, you can often do so on Twitch. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. This has been Khyber Shards. I'm Philip.
I'm Eric.
Thanks for rolling with us.